that she is trying to criminalize protected activity. The other part of this that I think it's important for people to understand is, remember, the First Amendment doesn't just protect your right to speak. It also has a often overlooked right listed in the amendment, which is your right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Look, that means that you and I, any member of the public, and frankly, Donald Trump, we have a right to speak to members of local, state, and federal government, including state legislators, about our grievances and ask them to remedy problems. And yet, again, if you look at the indictment, Fani Willis claims that all of the discussions that Donald Trump and his co-defendants had with state officials, local officials, state legislatures, asking them to investigate the election and to correct any problems, she's claiming those were illegal activities. Again, that is protected by the First Amendment.
You know, Hans, I'm glad that you brought that up, because there are a lot of videos out. I think I may have even produced one at one point where there is a montage of various other elected officials and or individuals that desire to be elected, where they also question the result. I know Hillary did. As a matter of fact, I have to say this all the time. I am in Hillary Clinton's book by name, according to her, as one of the reasons she lost the election, simply because I produced a video. And that video just said, hey, here's her party, here's what they believe in. So when I look at Hillary, when I look at the current minority leader of our Congress, they all question the legitimacy of then Donald Trump in the 2016 election. So my question, if there is this montage of video that's out there that exists where others won't even talk about Stacey Abrams from the great state of Georgia there, that did the same thing. I don't know to this day, actually, if she's ever even acknowledged that she lost the governorship race. With that being said, let me digress. Where then is relief? Shouldn't the governor, the state legislators, what is their role, Hans, in making sure that this renegade of an attorney, Fani, is kind of checkmate here? Am I on the wrong track, Hans?
Well, no. Unfortunately, the problem here is that, look, I think Fani Willis probably knows, because I don't think she's a dumb lawyer. I think she's just got bad motives. I think she probably realizes that she really doesn't have the law to be doing what she's doing, but I don't think she cares. Why? Because she's in Fulton County. I'm very familiar with Fulton County. I was actually a county election official there 2 decades ago. This is a predominantly Democrat county. She is counting on the fact that a jury will find Donald Trump and the 18 other co-defendants guilty despite the lack of facts, despite the lack of law, simply because they are Republicans. So any remedy is going to have to be in the appeals process, and the governor really can't do anything about this.
That's interesting. We're going to come right back with Hans here in just a moment. There are so many questions that so many of my colleagues have really kind of put forward. Say, hey, when you have Hans there, make sure that you ask him some of the following. Well, I think their questions are great. People are really paying attention to this particular issue here, because it doesn't just impact one, it impacts us all. We'll be right back.
shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Here to help us again make sense of all of this is Hans von Spakovsky. He is the senior legal fellow for the Edwin Meese Center, as also one of the greatest groups, in my opinion, that's out there, and that's the Heritage Foundation. I want to jump right back into this, Hans, because a lot of individuals have so many concerns, and I believe rightfully so. We keep hearing about all of the irregularities that have happened as relates to President Trump. One of those things that we keep hearing is not regular, and that was this issue of the Presidential Act, that he took documents, he shouldn't have had these documents. I don't know, I kind of remember a lot of my civics class. Isn't our President of the United States, regardless of who he is, don't they have an exemption as it relates to documentation, Hans?
Well, in fact, look, that relates not just to the classified documents issue, but to all of this particular indictment in Georgia against him, because presidents have long been recognized to have what's called presidential immunity. In fact, when they are acting in their job, when they are carrying out their duties as president, they can't be sued for doing that. They don't have personal, somehow criminal liability for carrying out their duties, and neither do their subordinates and people being directed by them. That's why, for example, Mark Meadows, who, as you know, was his chief of staff and who's named as a co-defendant, has moved to remove this case from state court to federal court based on the idea that immunity extends to him. When it comes to classified documents, remember, the president is the ultimate authority on classified documents. He is the one who can say whether a document should be classified, and he can at any time declassify any document and for any reason or no reason, and no one can question that, neither the CIA, the FBI, or anyone else. The problem in the Florida case is that ability to declassify documents, of course, ended at noon on January 20th when he was no longer president. So I think one of the key questions is going to be, did he actually declassify any of the documents that the FBI seized when they raided Mar-a-Lago? And that's, one of the issues. Just one other thing about that is, look, the Justice Department appears to be trying to maximize charges against Donald Trump at the very same time that they're trying to minimize charges against Hunter Biden and are refusing to do any kind of investigation of the multiple corruption allegations that have been lodged against Joe Biden for being involved with his son's business dealings with foreign entities. And that brings up the whole idea of a dual justice system.
Well, Hans, I'm glad that you brought that up because, again, I think all of America, I just left the EU a week ago rather, and these are some of the topics that are being discussed in the European theater. And they're looking at what's called this two-tiered justice system of the United States of America. If the exclusivity is given to the president and it's not given to any other, no vice presidents, no senators, how is it then that we have evidence? We've looked at the evidence. We looked at classified documents that was, I guess, in a garage and other places for then Senator, then Vice President Joe Biden. Why no charges, Hans?
Well, that's because, that illustrates how important it is who you have heading the Justice Department. Remember, look, the Justice Department, the FBI, are the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the country. And when you have political appointees like Merrick Garland, who's the head of DOJ, who are willing to use their law enforcement powers to abuse those powers for political purposes, then you have these kind of things happening. You have members of different parties being treated differently for the same offenses. And that's exactly what is unfortunately happening in the classified document situation.
Well, then I guess my train of logic then would take me to the next question. If the Department of Justice will not do their job, for whatever the reasons
Right.
are there any other provisos that are out there that perhaps the Congress can do? Can they go to, I don't know, a different judge? Can they go above those individuals, Department of Justice, say, hey, look, we're not getting relief here as it relates to doing what is right, what is written, therefore we're having to lean on you. Can you walk our audience through what then can our congressional leaders do to make justice blind here, Hans?
Look, they basically have three things that they can do. One, they are doing they can engage in intensive oversight hearings, and those are really important because those are that is the way to bring public pressure on an administration. And the two committees in Congress that have been investigating this, they are the ones that have uncovered all of the evidence about Hunter Biden's work with his father, with these foreign entities, these potential bribery allegations that the Justice Department refused to investigate. So that's one path. The second path is to use one of their most powerful weapons, which is the power of the purse. The House in particular, they are the House of Congress that comes up with the budget and appropriations. And frankly, the way to get at the Justice Department, to get at the Attorney General and others who are engaged in wrongdoing there, is by cutting the Justice Department's budget, specifically cutting things like, for example, the money used to fund the Attorney General's office. They have to make things as tough as possible for those individuals and some of those departments at the Justice Department. And the ultimate power, of course, is impeachment. If a cabinet official, if the head of one of the divisions of the Justice Department, who is confirmed by the Senate, if they are engaging in wrongdoing that meets the standards of impeachment, then the House can open an impeachment inquiry and decide whether that particular individual should be impeached and removed from office.
So I want to make sure that I get this. I knew that they had this power. I remember these things. If the spigot is turned off, could the snake grow some other kind of way, Hans?
If an employee in the federal government engages in activities that are not funded, that's actually a criminal violation of federal law. There's a law called the Anti-Deficiency Act. And most bureaucrats, they know about that law and they don't want to violate it. So defunding can be a very effective tool against cabinet departments like the Justice Department that are engaging in abusive behavior or wrongdoing.
The spirit of anarchism that we're looking at, then what you're sharing with our audience could really be resolved really quickly. Again, defund it. It has no support. There's no life support that's there. Last question on that, just your opinion. Why hasn't the Congress done so? This is their job. This is what we've elected them to do, and that is live out our constitutional laws. And I'm looking at then this element of chaos that continues to happen in our nation. They could put a stop to this. In your opinion, Hans, why haven't they?
Well, part of the problem is that, for example, look, the Republicans have been doing a good job on the House side of oversight hearings and turning up evidence. But remember, they only have a very small margin giving them control of the House. So, any kind of budget cuts like we're talking about, they're going to have to convince all of their caucus to support it. And that can be a difficult job. And of course, then they run into the fact that the other party controls the Senate, which can make it very difficult to cut budgets if Democrats are willing to oppose that in the Senate. So, the only way that you could ever the only way you could ever overcome that is if one political party like the Republicans, who are willing to engage in this kind of behavior, have a significant majority in the House so they can get bills through, and the same party has a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Without that, it can be pretty difficult to get through bills that the other party opposes.
So glad that you took part of your day, Hans, to be with us. Hans Pawlowski, who is the Senior Legal Fellow for the Edwin Meese Center. Really appreciate your time. We're going to make sure that all of your info is out there, how individuals reach you. Again, thank you so much for taking the time of your day to share this with our audience. We're coming right back with a friend of mine. You don't want to miss this because these issues are dividing this nation. We believe we can stop it. Stay tuned.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Really excited about our guest that I'm about to present to you. Matt Barber was an associate dean at Liberty University School of Law and the director of cultural affairs with the school's conservative legal action group. He was previously also policy director for cultural issues at Concerned Women for America. Matt, I know that your resume is much larger than this, but because I have so many questions, we'll post all of the grand things that you have been doing, which is a ton, by the way. And I really have always enjoyed your body of work. I just recently interviewed Hans on some of the same topics. I'm going to go from a different angle because I believe what we're looking at is really a two-tier system here. Let's talk about Fulton County here for just a moment.
Sure.
I'm looking at squalor, conditions there. I'm looking at something where a young man has spent several days in jail for something, in my opinion, but you're the scholar here, not me. I'm going to defer that to you. Should this young man, Floyd, have been in jail all these days, or should he have just been released? Should something else have happened? Was this judge really sending a message? Maybe something like, if you're black and you're conservative, this is what's going to happen to you. Am I reaching too far, Matt?
Well, no, I don't think so. And when we talk about this two-tier justice system and we talk about discrimination, we live in a world now here in the United States where discrimination runs rampant, not necessarily along the lines of systemic racial discrimination as we hear about so often, but more so in terms of ideological discrimination. And if you happen to be a conservative, if you happen to be a black conservative, well, then you represent a clear and present danger to the narrative of systemic racism. And so I think this is just part and parcel of kind of this two-tier justice system. And of course, we have a DA there in Fannie Willis, who is an African American. She is clearly ambitious. She is clearly has an ego, is driven by ambition. And so this is why we see things like this, these 13 counts against President Trump, something unprecedented in history, where this woman is going after President Trump. He also represents a clear and present danger to the establishment, both Democrat and Republican, frankly, primarily the Democrat side of things, because of his ideology. So we live in a nation now that has really become a banana republic. And I don't use that term lightly. It's not hyperbole. It used to be. But just imagine, for the first time in American history, now we have a fourth indictment against a president, something that is unprecedented in American history.
You know, Matt, I'm very, very concerned, and just that our audience, maybe that's tuning in for the first time today, they're going to do the research. They're going to find me out there. I traveled for then candidate Donald J. Trump. And it would always amaze me, Matt, when I would get back to my hotel room after speaking in various, auditoriums across the nation prior to Trump taking the main stage and that sort of thing, I would look at a plethora of individuals, faces, ethnicities, etc. When I would get back to my hotel room, put on the local news, whatever city I was in, they always would paint them as a white racist, and there were a bunch of racist people that were there. And I'm standing there, and I'm not just looking at my skin, by the way. I'm looking at a host of others that I'm thinking, wow, I was standing right there. I was part of the intro team. Why this visceral hatred for someone that thinks outside of the box? And again, I go back, Matt, to Fannie. Fannie, in my opinion, she's doing this to score points. I don't believe, and I want to get your legal take on this, Matt, she doesn't have, in my opinion, from what I've read, and I've read this indictment, by the way, taking time to do so, where's she trying to land with this? Won't this, in appeal, find its way, I don't know, being thrown out? Matt, your opinion?
Well, yeah, absolutely. She has no legal leg to stand on here. And really, this is prosecutorial misconduct. I mean, clearly, just like with Alvin Bragg out in New York, with the alleged hush money indictments that came down there, repeating the same indictment over and over again. To say that this case against President Trump is weak is a gross understatement. It's ridiculous, is what it is. And everybody knows it, but you have to understand here, Aubrey, that the fact that there is no merit to any of these charges is not the point. The process is the punishment. A couple things we need to look at here. First of all, it should come as no surprise. We need only look to the fact that this grand jury indictment was posted to the Fulton County Clerk's website before the grand jury even voted. Let that sink in a little bit. It was a foregone conclusion. Yes, go ahead.
Wait, Matt. I want to make sure I want to put a pin in that one. Because I've always wondered, I saw that, Matt, when that happened, by the way, and I thought, wait, there's something wrong here. Shouldn't another judge or someone step in? Who should be stepping in saying, there is something, I don't know, nefarious here. You can't do that. On that alone, could that case be thrown out, Matt?
On that alone, I believe that it could. Now, here's the problem. Again, let's go back to what I said earlier. The process is the punishment. So they know that the time it would take for these cases to be thrown out, the damage is done. And here's the irony. They're going after Trump for alleged election interference. Democrats love to do this, yet they are doing exactly what they're accusing Trump of. This is designed to interfere with the primary presidential election. So the fact that a grand jury had not even voted, the indictment was complete and posted on the website before ostensibly we even knew that the grand jury was going to come down with these charges, tells you that it was a foregone conclusion. It is a charade. It's a complete and utter charade. Then you add to this the fact that now Fani Willis is requesting that the trial begin, I think it's March 4th, literally the day before Super Tuesday. This is designed to hurt election chances, plain and simple.
Matt, I want to come back to a little more of this here because you've kind of sparked my interest. I have a dozen more questions, but I want to come back to one that you raised that I think, in my opinion, your finger's on the pulse beat of what I think a lot of Americans are really asking. I'm coming back with Matt Barber. You do not want to miss this. You're not hearing this anywhere else, but you are hearing it here at America Shines. We're coming right back. Every week, I love playing that song for a purpose. This is when our union rallied around that flag to make sure that we would have a union. By the way, there were a group of guys that did not want anything to do with it, and that was called the Democratic Party. That was Lincoln and the guys that hung out and said, we want to live out God's creed right in this earth. And by doing so, we're going to make sure this 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment happens. By the way, no support from those Dems, but it did happen nonetheless. And I think this is what embodies, in my opinion, William Barber. Why? Not just because of his past background, being a great associate dean at Liberty University, School of Law there, some of the other areas that Matt has worked in. Matt is a thinker. And again, I don't care what side of the aisle that a individual may find his or herself on. If the laws become something that is a two-tier system, we're all in trouble. And it seems to be targeting, as Matt said earlier, an ideological bent. If you have a very patriotic, conservative view of this great nation, which I believe is the greatest nation on this globe, you are a target. Matt, want to jump right back in here. Where's the relief? Is there relief? Could not, for instance, one of the indictees, could they not then go outside of Fannie and say to another judge, hey, this is unfair. These indictments were already posted. By the way, couldn't Trump's guys, girls go and say, this is crazy. We're having the biggest day in this nation. There's no way that we're going to be able to bring all of the necessary things that we need to the table to even defend our client while he's working. Am I asking for too much, Matt?
Well, you're not, and I think ultimately everything that you just stated will come to pass. I think that any indictments would be overturned on appeal. Any of these motions, a lot of what's happening here can be overturned on appeal. As an attorney, I can tell you, however, sadly, the wheels of justice grind slow. And when the motivation is to get headlines and to have a narrative and ultimately to interfere with the presidential election and hurt the enemy candidate, and I use the word enemy, not opposing candidate, because they view President Trump and people like you and I, Aubrey, as the enemy. When the goal is to create a narrative, we are living in this is not George Washington's America anymore. This is Joseph Stalin's Russia. This is pure Pravda propaganda. They are playing it to a T. And, again, I used the term in the last segment, banana republic. Part and parcel, a hallmark of a banana republic is to use the criminal justice system in order and weaponize it in order to go after political opponents. That's what we see happening here. Again, people's jaws should be agape at the realization that we now have 4 indictments, 2 federal indictments under the Joe Biden DOJ. His Justice Department is going after the front runner in the opposition political party for this upcoming presidential election. That is a prima facie case, that is prima facie evidence that this is all being politicized. The criminal justice system, the judicial system is being weaponized in order to silence, as he likes to say, not just President Trump. They're not just going after him. They're going after you, Aubrey, myself, and all of your listeners right here who happen to be, I believe, I know you are, truth seekers. We are seeking truth, and we want to see our constitutional Republican form of government continue to work as it was designed. Unfortunately, the United States Constitution represents a hurdle to the globalist Democrat. And I say globalist because they are willing to break down this nation, our economy, our political system, and see us suffer, the American people suffer, in order to further their ideological agenda. And Trump's head is on the chopping block, and he really represents kind of a metaphor for all of us. They're going after him. They're going after us, Aubrey.
Yeah, I know. And again, this is why every week, Matt, we do the work that we do here. We do our due diligence, making sure we have done our research, et cetera. So we're not just, coming on just kind of jabbing away here. We've done our due diligence. We know the issues that we're addressing. We're talking about it, and we're making a difference, by the way. We're getting tens of thousands of views just on small little social clips after we take shows like this and we send it out and people are aghast. I want to shift gears here. Same issue. Help us legally understand something, Matt. I've learned this past week from some sources in Congress that there was a collaboration of these various district attorneys, these Soros-backed attorneys, New York, Fannie, etc., where they have collaborated with the Department of Justice going into the White House. Now, I don't know what they talked about, but it seems unethical. Am I reading too much, Matt, into the tea leaves there?
Absolutely not. A gross violation of the separation of powers for these state and federal jurisdictions to be intermingling. And really, the word is not collaborating, Aubrey. The word is conspiring. And I think everybody with two eyes to see recognizes that this is a conspiracy. You know, everyone's a conspiracy buff until the conspiracy actually starts to unfold. And then you just happen to be somebody who saw the writing on the wall. So absolutely, they are, you know, in a perfect world where justice is actually served and we have people, you know, let's say Republicans, let's say that they regain the control of the wheels of government in the House and the Senate, hopefully the presidency, then these individuals who were collaborating, who were conspiring, federal prosecutors, the Biden DOJ, these state district attorneys' offices, they can be held accountable. I believe investigations should unfold. They should be criminally charged, not in the sense that they're doing to President Trump from a political standpoint, but the rule of law matters and it has to be enforced. And we are now living more so than I believe in any time in American history since perhaps the Civil War. We are living in a completely lawless society where the fourth branch of government, the mainstream media, is one of the biggest players of all, pushing the propagandist narrative down the throats of the American people. But I think the American people are waking up to this. And to an earlier question, real quick, I'm hoping and I'm praying and I believe there is a parallel track going on right now, hopefully, to get all of this persecution, political persecution of President Trump and others before the United States Supreme Court so that they can take a look at all of this and hopefully nip it in the bud. Again, my concern, I don't think that happens before the damage is already done in this election. But the damage may actually be backfiring on Democrats as it has been a fundraising boon for President Trump. How will independents react to all of this? Is that who they're targeting for alienation from President Trump? Perhaps, and they may be doing enough. Only time and God knows.
Yeah. You know, Matt, I personally believe that the other side of the aisle would be apoplectic if this was, I don't know, let's say Barack Hussein Obama or others that were, you know, doing things of this magnitude. I have just a few seconds here with you. My dear friend Newt Gingrich has suggested to several individuals, especially to Jim Jordan and some of the guys here in Congress, they should bring in Barack. They should bring in Hillary, that they're all tied. Just a quick yay or nay. What's your opinion, Matt, on that?
What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And unfortunately, when you're living in a banana republic, you have to play by the rules of the banana republic, which is that there are no rules. We're going to have to implement, unfortunately, I say we, Republicans, some of the same strategies that Democrats are using, but they're pulling out all the stops now. I think they know this is their last chance. They know that this may end up biting them down the road, but delayed gratification is not something Democrats hold near and dear to their heart.
Oh boy, that's something my deceased father used to say. Matt, where can our audience find you? Take 10 seconds, sir.
Yeah, xtruth BMS. That's Extreme Truth. XTRUTHBMS.com is my podcast website. It's getting up and running here soon.
Matt Barbara, everyone, pay attention. I love this guy. I've watched him from a distance for a long time. His commentary to me has always just been excellent because he allows just a common individual to really grasp what's really going on. Again, pay attention to what Matt Barber is doing. Check out his podcast, On Fire. Coming right back, you're going to be shocked at what I'm about to show you, but stay tuned. You'll see it yourself. Every week we come to shine the light on topics, as we just did with Hans, as well as Matt. These are brilliant guys and girls that are out here that are really making a difference. They love this nation, as I do. But I want to really go back to the heart of this. Really, it tied around Harrison Floyd. Because here was a guy that was incarcerated. None of the other defendants were, by the way. And there are a lot of reasons why, pardon me, well, he didn't have someone to bond him out. First of all legal scholars say he should have never even had a bond. He should have been able to sign a signature, as does those who commit real crimes, like up in New York and other places, Chicago, Illinois. You can actually kidnap and do a whole lot of other things. Go before a judge and just simply sign your name and say, hey, you know what, I'll be back. Or you can cross over our southern border illegally, which is a crime. And they'll say, here's a ticket. And by the way, they'll give you a phone and to make sure that you come back. You're right, as if though someone's coming back. But what does Harrison really represent? He represents an ideological bent that the liberal left hate. Don't take my word for it. Let's look at one of the greatest Supreme Court justices when they were doing the same thing to him not too long ago. Let's go to that clip.
That I deny each and every single allegation against me today that suggested in any way that I had conversations of a sexual nature or about pornographic material with Anita Hill, that I ever attempted to date her, that I ever had any personal sexual interest in her, or that I in any way ever harassed her. And from my standpoint, as a Black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity Blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas had it right. By the way, what you didn't see on that, you know who was conducting that? That whole Senate committee hearing? You got it. Joe Biden. One of the biggest known documented racists that there is. The same Joe Biden, by the way, that said he didn't want his children going to a school that was integrated because he said he didn't want that type of jungle to be a part of his kid's life. But it doesn't stop there. There are others that are also controlled by the same narrative. They get tens of millions of dollars in annual salary. That's a great thing in America. But then they purport themselves to be the defenders of Black people. I want you to look at the next clip because these are the puppets that are being used to cause this type of divisiveness in this nation. And they cram it down our throats and our kids' throats as the standard bearers. Don't take my word. Listen to it yourself.
No. It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
Well,
had
I'm acutely aware, Charlemagne, that I'm a Black person, just as you are a Black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really Black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a Black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney. Because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even Black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seems to me that should have been a wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, no, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation. Yeah, I'm just saying, but you are Black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't Black. Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now said.
I'm going to do another whole segment on Charlemagne. He's a buffoon. His crew, they're all buffoons. Because what you did not hear in the opening of that, he used the N-word to describe Larry Elder. In other words, calling Larry Elder, can you imagine if someone white were to do that to, let's say, Charlemagne? I thought Larry Elder checkmated him incredibly well. Here is a guy, Charlemagne, that gets paid tens of millions. They're not championing the guys like Harrison Floyd. No. They won't champion the guys like Clarence Thomas, those of us who believe in this nation, believe in our Constitution, believe in our God, while they get paid by, quote, the white man tens of millions of dollars. They are the liberals' voice to make sure we stay divided. That's why we do the work we do here every week on America Shines. We'll continue to shine the light. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll do it again. Until then, I bid you peace.
God's children are not for sale.
It's the movie that rocked the box office and left moviegoers everywhere speechless. The Hollywood elites, well, they tried shutting it down, but they couldn't stop the blockbuster film Sound of Freedom from exposing the truth behind child sex trafficking to audiences everywhere.
Join us and Turning Point USA for an exclusive interview with a man whose bravery inspired the film, activist and author Tim Ballard. Thank you for tuning in right here on Real America's Voice.
Wittingly or not, they are running interference for human traffickers and for pedophiles, and shame on them.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
I am Turning Point USA contributor Erin Elmore, and today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Tim Ballard and Eduardo Vorastegui to discuss all things Sound of Freedom. It's hard to catch your breath after you watch this movie. It's so powerful, it's so upsetting, it's so emotional. And I know your journey, Tim, to getting this movie into the theaters was long and arduous. How did you go from working in the federal government to having a movie on the big screen?
Yeah, well, I never dreamed any of that would be a movie. I spent 12 years as a special agent in the government, undercover operator, Homeland Security. 10 years of that was on the border. And in year 12, I got so frustrated because they'd send me overseas to find Americans who were abusing children or American children. And if I didn't find that, they'd make me come home. But I'd always find children. And to me, it doesn't matter what country a child is from. The problem is child trafficking knows no borders and boundaries, but bureaucracy does. Mm-hmm. And so the last time they said come home was in 2013, and I called my wife and I said, I don't know if I should come home. Tell me to come home. I wanted her to tell me to come home, but I felt like if I stayed, we could finish. And she said, do not come home. I don't care what happens. I don't care if we end up living in a tent because we lose everything. Quit your job and stay. It ends up being one of the biggest rescue operations to date that we know of. It's funny, all the media